Welkom terug. Een van die grootste aasvoëlvergiftigingspogings het op 8 Mei in die Krugerpark plaasgevind. 128 bedreigde aasvoëls is dood, maar danksy bewaringsorganisasies wat hande gevat het en die grootste reddingsoperasie tot op hede uitgevoer het 83 aasvoëls oorleef. Ons gesels vanoggend met John Davies, projek-koordineerder vir die beskerming en navorsing van roofvoëls in die Endangered Wildlife Trust se Roofvoël-program, om uit te vind hoe dit met die aasvoëls gaan. Good morning, John.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Please explain to the viewers, maybe some are not aware of exactly what happened. On the 8th of May, how did you realize, how did you come upon this tragedy, and how did it unfold?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. I mean, our organization works a lot with tracking of wildlife as part of our work. You know, that's how we understand what these species do, where they move, what their behavior is. And quite a common thing that you get on a lot of GPS tracking units on animals is that if the animal stops moving, it'll tell you there might be an issue. So in some ways, maybe a little bit lucky. The previous evening, in short succession, we had 2 of our vultures that basically showed that they weren't moving normally. So we got pretty good relationships with most of the South African National Park section rangers. So for that specific area, we phoned the section ranger that evening and just said, listen, if it's possible to fly first thing in the morning, please get over the site. Fortunately, he had access to a Battlehawk aircraft, so that allowed him to give us a confirmation very early in the morning that there was an issue. So even from the air, he was already WhatsApping us and trying to call saying, you know, please kind of initiate the response. I mean, from our side, luckily the night before we started prepping a little bit just to make sure that people were in the area and were available, which made a big difference as well. And yeah, from there, it's kind of this cascading range of events that took place from there. So, I mean, considering the scale, obviously we could see photos from the air immediately showing it's a pretty severe incident. So we made the decision straight from the start that we're going to have helicopter support for this. And we were fortunate. South African National Park sent one of their helicopters up for the day. And then really lovely pilot in Hoedspruit, Jana Meyer, she assisted with her private helicopter as well after getting permission to fly into Kruger for the emergency response. So, I mean, things like that made such a big difference in terms of covering a large area. You know, a lot of people, I think, are used to thinking of maybe a poaching incident such as a rhino, where you'll have 1 individual, 2 individuals, but quite a small area. Whereas with poisoning incidents, you could have vultures up to a couple of kilometers away from the poisoning incident. So finding them in the ground, obviously they're not very large animals as well. So doing it all from the ground is incredibly tedious.
Sure.
John, how often are vultures directly kind of poisoned, or how often is it a byproduct of poachers trying to kind of poach another animal and they kind of just get the poison in?
So it's on and off, actually, and it's important to remember this isn't really something that's just Eastern South Africa. You know, this is continental. In Europe, wildlife poisoning is even quite a significant threat. But if you look at the whole of Africa, about 90% of all mortalities of vultures that are caused by people are from wildlife poisoning incidents. Wow. And the reality is we don't need to have a lot of these incidents to affect the population, just because, again, it's not 2s and 3s that are getting affected. You know, an incident like this has catastrophic effects, you know, and it's one event's worth of damage affecting an entire population.
Yeah. In this incident, how many birds were killed and what species were affected? And is it true that it almost led, if it wasn't for this wonderful rescue operation, to extinction of some of these species?
So I wouldn't say it would lead to extinction for these species in this incident, but the impact of it for the northern Kruger would have been way more severe. So in this case, on the day, they concluded 123 birds were found dead. And on the 3rd, there's been sort of 4 follow-up searches around the area, obviously to make sure that everything has been kind of sorted out at the site. And 1 additional dead bird was found and 1 additional live bird on follow-up. So yeah, 124 confirmed birds that died on site on the day. And then in terms of the species, by far the most affected are whiteback vultures, which are listed as critically endangered. But we also had Cape vultures, hooded vultures affected, and lappet-faced vulture.
What can we do to protect our wildlife even more so against these incidences?
That's such a difficult question. You know, we get asked this quite frequently. And one thing, I mean, I've spent about 9 or 10 years now working in vulture conservation. So I would say I'm getting to the point where I'm a little bit settled, but still, a very long way to go in my career. But it's a tough question to truly answer. But I think one of the most important things is from people. I mean, South Africans, we all love nature, or the vast majority of South Africans, we're passionate about this. We're outdoors people. And birds like these are absolutely integral to ecosystem services. And often they don't really get the good publicity that I think they deserve. If we lose animals like this, another species like spotted hyena, often people look at them, they're a little bit dirty. They're not the most pleasant animals, but they're incredible. I promise you, anybody that spends time with us looking at hyenas and vultures, you will fall in love. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Sorry, no, the
Sorry?
irony is that I read in one of the articles that, these birds, as well as aasdiere like hyenas and other animals, they help us not to get poisoned from meat that has been lying around for a while, and now they get poisoned. They are such an integral part of the ecosystem, and also for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the interesting things there was years ago in the 1980s and early 90s in India and, Southeast Asia, they lost probably 99%, 99% of their vulture population due to different sort of poisoning incidents. And the healthcare implications for the country was astronomical. They were talking about, in excess of $1 billion additional healthcare costs from disease outbreaks such as rabies. So, I mean, we see it in the low veld, even within game reserves, looking at the control of diseases like anthrax. I mean, there's a lot of research to still do, but there's a lot of indication that without these animals around cleaning up these carcasses, that spread of disease will be a lot more rapid, and then starts affecting everything else. We think about the borders and the confines of a protected area, but nobody talks about communities living next door to these protected areas. If you have more severe disease outbreaks, how does that start affecting livestock? How does that start affecting dogs in communities? If rabies is more common, that's a pretty serious threat to people in these regions.
John, quickly, whilst we have you with us, I want to jump from vultures to geckos. Just to speak to us quickly about the gecko that was kind of rediscovered recently, and it's a gecko that we haven't seen for a few decades.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It was a funny story. It's actually my best friend Darren, where we grew up. He also works for the Endangered Wildlife Trust, and since I can remember, we've been doing trips looking at random geckos and lizards everywhere. This is one of the species that's been flagged as data deficient for a very long time. It's been over 30 years since it was last seen, and the site they occur on is right on top of a mountain in the Blyde River Canyon. So sheer cliff faces all around. So you can't actually access the location, and that's likely the reason nobody's bothered going back. And these things kind of go missing a little bit in publicity as well. So in this case, after a lot of negotiation and permitting with Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Association, they finally gave us approval. And ironically, the same helicopter pilot, Jana Meyer, did the flight for us on the day. And we were fortunate to go spend 4 nights camping on top of one of the 3 rondavels. A beautiful experience. Fortunately, the geckos seem to be doing well, the species we were looking for. I mean, they're quite tough to get to. As you can imagine, the edges we were working were fairly steep. So, it's just kind of like scaling along and looking at little crevices during the evenings. But it was exciting. And again, it shows you kind of the resilience of nature and the surprising thing that even amongst a tourism destination, I mean, we stood there and you kind of look across at one of the viewpoints on the other side, and there's, buses coming through as tourists from all over the world, and you still have the opportunity to find a species that's not been seen for so long.
Wow. John, just to conclude, how is the birds doing now, and what is their prognosis at this point, the ones you rescued?
Yeah, so it's always nice at least having something positive coming out of these events. And besides the fact that a lot of people got a good learning curve on how to deal with larger poisoning events, the birds are all doing pretty well. Out of the 85 in total that were rescued, 3 succumbed that couldn't be saved, but the other 82 are doing really well. We've already released the first 18. This evening, we're actually getting the next 20 to 25. We're doing final assessments on them tonight. And then tomorrow we'll do the next release of that batch of birds. But we're planning to do about 4 phased releases. of these birds back into the wild. So yeah, absolutely. It's been a good couple of years of chipping away, finding good treatment regimes and working with rehab centers like Moholo Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. And then, I mean, great veterinarians that have good experience working with birds, giving input. Jessica Briner in particular always comes to mind. I mean, she's helped us a huge amount over the years refine this. And then Wildscapes Veterinary Services that are, private veterinary practice down in Hoedspruit, and amazing team. They work with African parks and all over the show. So, with all of that input and experience coming together, managing these incidents just becomes easier over time, which we're fortunate to say. So yeah, we're hopeful in about 2 weeks we'll be done with getting all the birds out.
That's wonderful news, and thank you to you and everyone who collabed with you for this amazing reuse rescue mission, and we are very glad. Please send all our blessings to all the vultures that you're going to work with in the next few days.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the kind words.
So gesels John Davies, ons is baie bly oor al die aasvoëls wat hulle kon red, danksy almal wat saam gestaan het en saamgewerk het en hulle nou kan laat weer en hoor vlieg as gewoonlik. Bly ingeskakel vir 'n bietjie kombuis.